Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Luis Olavo Bonino. I work for the Dutch Tech Center for Life Sciences, which is also the host of ELIXIR in the Netherlands. And today I'm going to talk to you about how we see data stewardship associated with fair data and how we realize this concept here in the Netherlands. So, in summary, I'll briefly introduce the data stewardship and place the contribution of fair data into it. Then I'll present how we are implementing the fair data principles as part of data stewardship here in the Netherlands. This implementation includes this bring your own data meetings, BYODs, and an ecosystem of fair data tooling. Finally, I will show you how we are organizing ourselves in the Netherlands and how we work here. So, fair data stewardship. When you talk about fair data stewardship, we are meaning the data stewardship of fair data. So, the data stewardship as a broad concept, it's a combination of all expertise to treat properly data before, during, and after the project itself, the running of the project. So before you have to do some experimental design, even in your proposal, your project proposal, you design the experiments that you are going to have. In some cases, and now increasingly so, you design the data or at least plan for the data that you are going to use or you're going to create in your project. Then you can see how you are going to reuse existing data whenever possible instead of recreating. Planning of the storage, network, and computer infrastructure for your experiment, for the data associated with the project, how you acquire data, and then how you are going to process it for the various usages you are going to have for the data during the project, after and before, and how you are going to publish the data in a format that allows functional interlinking of data sets, meaning that you want, if you're going to create some data, how you're going to format it in a way that it can be more easily interlinked with the other existing data sets or the other data sets that you are going to create in a project. And also, it's not necessarily the same how you're going to format this or structure this data in a way that's suitable for long-term preservation and for analysis and other activities. So how we are going to optimize the data structure, format, representation for each one of the tasks that we have with the data. So this was in general the fair data stewardship, but and you see that many it's heavily based on how we deal, plan, and process data, and then and this is where fair data comes into to help in a way of facilitating all these activities, and I'll explain you briefly what I mean by fair data in a moment. So, in a summary, you have a kind of cycle of data stewardship, data design, planning, data and the study capture, data processing and curation, data integration, preservation, data analysis and model, and all of this around or over a common data infrastructure. From a process point of view, in our vision, data stewardship encompasses a planning phase where you prepare the data environment for the running of the project, and then during the project you have the management phase where the actual data creation and processing and integration takes place, and also, of course, maintenance, update of the data, validation, and all other surrounding activities. And then after your project finishes, then you have to take care of the long-term preservation of the data, the availability of the data. You created a relevant data set. You want this to be available for yourself, for others. From a sustainability point of view, try to assemble this in how this is happening nowadays, and how this should happen or should remodel in the future. For instance, we have data management plans, and this is going to be increasingly mandatory for research projects, research programs. For instance, our Horizon 2020 and member states, the Netherlands is already in some of the funding programs. It's already requiring the applicants to have data management plans and data management work packages in their project proposals. And then during the project, you execute this plan. However, there is still a big challenge that after the project finishes, how you are going to maintain this data, how you are going to guarantee the long-term preservation, stewardship of this data sets, because most of the cases, the project funds cannot be used after the end of the project. And who is going to fund that? Who is going to provide the resources that are necessary for keeping these infrastructures, these data assets alive? And all of these things, the data management plan, the data execution, the execution of data plan, and then the long-term preservation, they should rely on the interoperability backbones, on the standards and common procedures that should be, for instance, that are going to be developed by ELIXIR and Accelerate. So increasingly, people will have to rely on this interoperability backbone, the standards and procedures, in a way that this data will be more interoperable with other data sets created in other projects, in other domains. You have cross domains integration needs as well. And then here comes the FAIR data to try to support all these activities. For instance, in life science, or in general, but we are talking here in life sciences more specifically, we have a typical scenario where someone produces some data and someone consumes the data. And until not so long ago, most of the cases, you produce some data that you consume yourself, because it was not very easy to access, to find or access, or have, the communication facilities were not mature enough to allow you to use or integrate your data with the people's data. However, this is already here. The communication facilities are in place in widespread. So nowadays, increasingly, more people are consuming the data that you create, and you are increasingly consuming more data that other people create. But then we have significant issues on each one of these three parts. For instance, on the data creation part, when you are producing the data itself, or when you are consuming, you have problems. On the data creation part, you have problems like sustainability, privacy, what's the kind of security facilities that I need, what kind of license should I apply to my data, what kind of access should I grant based on the license, and even things that are taken for granted. For instance, I solved my storage problem, because I bought a very nice hard drive. But what about when this hard drive fails? It does. It eventually does. Or when are you going to have a real backup on and off site, or you just have another hard drive just besides that other one, maybe even in the same machine that you copy your data around? Who gets the call for when the server that you deposit, where you deposit your data, is offline during the night? So these things are not very commonly taken into account. When you are for the data itself, we have many concerns such as what's the data format that I should use. There is a enormous variety of data formats, of file formats that the people are using, and it's not very easy most of the time to relate them. And what's the metadata that I should produce or extract from my data or make available? What are the semantics that I should apply so later it will be easier for myself or for the others to understand what's the content of my data set? And then when you are consuming the data, the immediate problem that you face is, well, where can I find? Where is the data set that contains this information that I'm interested in? How can I, even if I find, how can I access? Is there a username and password, or is there a form that I have to fill or request, or a phone number that I should call to be able to access the data? What's the format that the data is going to be made available? What's the license? Am I allowed to access the data? How can I integrate this data set with others that I need, or with my data that I need to answer my scientific question, or to run my experiment, or to make some specific analysis? How can I query the data to filter only the content that I need? So to help cope with this enormous variety of issues, we have this FAIR Data initiative that aims at supporting existing communities in their attempts to enable valuable scientific data and knowledge to be published and used in a fair manner. And when we are talking about fair data, and we are talking about data that should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, we are not constraining ourselves to have these aspects solved for human consumption, because more or less nowadays you already have that solved for human consumption. However, with the increased amount of data sets available, we have to automate more and more the process of finding, accessing, interoperating, and reuse data, because humans cannot cope with the scale. So when I talk about findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, we are talking about these 4 items to be for machines. So findable, for instance, we have to provide a way that a machine can read a descriptive metadata and understand what's the content of the data set. Should have a machine actionable license in a way that the machine can understand whether it can access or not the data set, what's required, what kind of authentication is going to be used, what's the access protocol, what's the access mechanism to actually access the data once it was found. To interoperate the data, and of course also the metadata, should be machine readable and annotated with the resolvable vocabularies and ontologies, so a system could understand and could infer whether 2 data items from 2 different data sets can be related together, are referring to the same concept, or are using the same identifiers so they can be linked together. And reuse the data should be sufficiently well described to allow as automated as possible integration with other compatible data sources, and information about the provenance, who created this data set, who curated that, who maintained what's the version, what's all this information to be able to reuse the data. So, in a nutshell, that's how we see the fair data stewardship. So stewardship planning for using the data, for managing the data, and then planning for later sustainability of the data in terms of fair data and data to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And then how here in the Netherlands we are realizing this vision. So this fair data idea have been formalized in a set of principles that are available at the Force 11 website, and the principles are more or less a little bit more complete, of course, but are in the level of abstraction as I described here. So it does not impose specific technological solution. Then this allows different groups, different organizations to implement solutions for fair data using different approaches. And from now on, what I'm going to show you is how here in the Netherlands we are realizing what are the decisions that we're taking here, that people can, others could also adopt the same, or adopt the approach, the technical solution, or adopt the approach but implement a different technical solution, or create a completely different approach and technical solution, as long as it complies with the FAIR principles. So one of the ways that we have, and we have been doing this for almost 2 years now, for creating fair data, so producing fair data or converting data, non-fair data, existing non-fair data into fair data, but also to increase the awareness of people of the importance of having the data in this manner, of integrating, having an easier way of integrating different data sets so they can answer more complex and scientific questions, as through BYODs, these bring your own data events. So these are workshops that have as the goals to learn, or to teach in this case, how to make data linkable with hands-on experience with the experts, and but these hands-on activities are based on telling story, meaning that there is a scientific question for each BYOD. I want to answer this scientific question, and to answer that, we believe that by integrating these data sets, we will have a more complete answer. And then the work of the BYOD is to prepare to treat these data sets in such a way that this interconnection are possible, and then the scientific question is answered. Normally, it's a 2 or 3 day event where we have data owners or people that specialize or have deep knowledge on the given data sets, on the selected data sets to be worked on the BYOD. Also, we include data interoperability experts, so these people know how to treat the data in such a way that the different data sets will be integrated, and domain experts to help the data and the data owners and the interoperability experts in treating the data in not in a technical level, but at a domain sound way. So is this element in a data set a protein, a gene, or a protein product, or something else? So sometimes the data experts don't have the biological, in this case, the domain knowledge, and then we have to have domain experts to provide this knowledge. And this is more or less how it happens. So, for instance, we have this question. I would like to explore common genotype-phenotype relations between Alzheimer's disease and Huntington's disease, and I need to combine Alzheimer's disease and Huntington's disease to answer my questions. And then we have people. So, in this case, two ladies that one has the Alzheimer's disease information, another one has the Huntington's disease. What happens nowadays is that, okay, I'll make available my data. So one is in one specific format and structure and representation. Another one is a completely different one. And you try to put this together, and it doesn't work because everything is apparently different. There is no way that we can easily find a connection point to integrate this data set. Then, when you're sharing linkable data, functionally interoperable data, I can say that, okay, I can go straight to answer my questions with the data from multiple data owners because this data is already in a format that I can more easily integrate and then answer. So it's already prepared for integration. So then it speeds up the process, and this is the goal of the BYODs, to produce this linkable data. So basically, in a BYOD, you have ontologies, the non-FAIR data sets, you have ontologies, metadata of this, and a set of experts that will work to prepare, to treat, to process, transform this data into FAIR data sets, and these FAIR data sets are more easily integrated. One point to be stressed here is that when the data is in the functional interlinkable format, the sole purpose is to facilitate data integration and interoperability. For instance, you have here examples of different types of data in a different representation formats, and then you go through this BYOD, in this case, a process to transform the data into an more easily interlinkable format, and then you can make these connections. For instance, you can select what you are interested on, as highlighted in this under this red outline. However, this does not mean that the data in this format should or are optimally formatted to be used for other purposes, for instance, for some high-performance analysis. Once the data sets are integrated and the scientific question has been answered by testing if the integrated data actually contains the informational elements enough to answer the question, if you want to do some other processing on this data, like analysis or something else, you should check whether the format is appropriate for the purpose that you have after the integration. So it may be the case, or often is the case, that this linkable format is the format for you to integrate, and then you have to perform extra transformation that's optimized for some specific purposes, for the types of analysis that you want to have. And then different types of analysis also may require different transformations. So this is just to emphasize that this linkable format is not a silver bullet, is not for all purposes. The sole purpose is for integration. And then this is how data is created through these BYODs nowadays. And then this is the kind of one sample of the ecosystem of FAIR data applications that we are envisioning here in the Netherlands, and we are working on the realization of them. So the first thing, the central point of the whole ecosystem is, of course, the data itself. In this case, something that we call a FAIR data resource, which is composed of a data set in the FAIR, in this functional interlinkable format, its related metadata, and the proper license. And then, again, we have these BYODs to produce these FAIR data resources, but it's a very it's a kind of manual process, and there's a lot of personal expertise involved in that, and a lot of most of the time consumed there is on treating, transforming, manipulating the data for producing the interoperable format. To help that, we are working on a tool to automate as much as possible this process of transforming data. We call it verifying the data. So and then this tool we are calling the verifier. It will help to automate most of the transformation processes during a BYOD, but also once it's more mature, can be used by data owners to automatically transform the existing data sets into FAIR data to make available to others. However, different types of data, you have, for instance, a BCF file, another data set that's stored in a relational database. So we have different types of structures of data, and some of them are common. For these common data structures, formats, we are working on what we call a FAIR data model registry, where we can create a model of the existing data format structure in the way it is now, and how this structure should be transformed to become a FAIR data asset. So this will register there. We store these models. The idea here is that we connect the verifier with this FAIR data model registry to help the automation of the verification process. So the verifier can be integrated with the FAIR data model registry to try to match an input data set model with the ones stored in the registry. Once the match is found, the information about how to transform the data set into a FAIR format is retrieved by the verifier from the model registry, which is going to be the guideline for the transformation process on the verifier. Once you have a FAIR data set, another tool that we are currently working on, and we are soon going to have the first implementation, it's what we call a FAIR data point. A FAIR data point provides access to data sets. It basically, in most basic functionality, it gives information about the data sets that's being offered, manage the access to the data, and the management of the access should be compliant with the given license, and gather metrics for the metadata and the data access. So we are currently working on this first implementation in the context of the ODEX for All, Open Data Exchange for All project that we have here in the Netherlands. Then we have a FAIR data point, which is a data FAIR port, which is a data interoperability platform. It provides, among others, a search mechanism for finding the FAIR data, supports publication, and access to the FAIR data published there. It enables ecosystem of different applications that we use the data that will be made available in this FAIR port and services. Of course, it should have a federated architecture. We are not talking about having one gigantic facility. We want to have distributed systems that will intercommunicate to exchange information, support citation of data sets and data items, provide metrics as well for data usage and citation. Just an example of some of the main components that should be in a FAIR port. We have the FAIR data search engine, so we can query and find the data sets that contain the data information that we need, that complies with the F, that supports the findability part of FAIR. Then we have embedded for the data sets that will be made available. You have data points, so people can actually access the data through this data point in the FAIR port. Helps the accessibility part. And then we have what we call projectors registry. Projectors are third-party, or even the same data owner, are ways of transforming your data in such a way to comply with other users other than the ones previously defined by the data owner when creating this data set. For instance, if you have a very simple example, you have a data set with the gender, height, and weight of people. This is what's there. This is where what the access point, the FAIR data point is giving access to. But someone else may have an application that requires the people's BMI. So we can have a projector that makes a calculation on this data set and extracts the BMI instead of just retrieving the height and weight of people. So this projector facilitated interoperability because it adapts, allows the adaptation of the data to the purpose of the user. And then we have the Verifier Plus metadata publication facility that to allow people to submit metadata or data for publication at Fairport, and then allowing this data to be reused by others. Minimally, the Fairport, to allow the findability to support the search engine, for instance, it has to store the metadata about the data sets, but whoever is running or deploying a Fairport may also choose to not only store the metadata about the data and forward the access to the original location of the data, but also may choose to allow the publication of the data and therefore the storage of the data. So the way, sorry, there's an extra T here, but the way of working that we're planning to realize all the things here in the Netherlands is as following. We have many projects, and so we have the PIs with the projects that relate to data, and then they have the teams to work on these projects. And because there's a huge overlap on the needs and the things that should be developed and supported by this project with the ideas of FAIR data systems and implementation, here we are centralizing the coordination of these activities in different projects related to data interoperability in this DTL National FAIR Data Engineering team. So these PIs with this project, they made available part of their capacity, the resources in this project to DTL, and we coordinate the work across teams, across expertise, across skill sets for each one of the needs of the individual projects related to data and the general FAIR development plans. So here we have this, nowadays we have around 25 people available, and then we reshuffle them based on what are the next steps that we want to have, what are the next tools that we want to implement, and then we leverage from this available resources. And yeah, this is what I have to say today. Thank you.